So we're back with the SoCal Business and Basketball Report. This is Ray Dietz, and this week we're in Chino Hills, California, where we had Etiwanda facing Chino Hills High School. And Etiwanda wanted to wait a little to see them this year, as they had some losses from last year's team, and they've developed as the years come along to the point where they were 20-2 coming into the game tonight. They always play with intensity. And Chino Hills was 13-9 coming into the ball game tonight. And of course, their senior Onyeka Okongwu was their best player last year. He was back this year as a senior, and he'll be headed to USC next year. Also, Chino Hills last year from their state championship team, Andre Ball, cousin of Lonzo, Leangelo, and LaMelo, he graduated. He's at Pepperdine this year. He's contributing to the team there. He played 17 minutes this last game, and the game before that he played 10 minutes for Pepperdine, so he's getting some action. And meanwhile, from Etiwanda's team, they graduated Elijah Harkless last year, who was their best player. And he's getting some very good experience this year at Cal State Northridge. He started a few games early on. And he's been up and down as a freshman, but like I said, he's getting valuable experience. Last year when we were out in this region, we mentioned the history of dairy farming in the Chino Hills area. Most of the dairy farmers have moved to the San Joaquin Valley, to Tulare in that region. So it's become your typical suburban type of atmosphere here in Chino Hills, a lot of retail, service type of businesses. And there's one manufacturer of note, the Timco company, aerospace, automotive, manufacturing. A lot of people that would hire here came from Boeing, U.S. Navy, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineering. So that's a notable manufacturer in the area. But for the most part, it's a suburban neighborhood. People come out for the larger houses. It's about 35 miles from downtown Los Angeles. So if you're willing to put up with the drive into LA, you can get a lot more house out here in the Chino Hills area. Before we get into tonight's game, I wanted to mention Jared Lucas from Los Altos this past week. Scored 52 points in a game, and he became the all-time leading scorer in Southern Section history, passing Casey Jacobson. So he had a nice game. He'll be headed to Oregon State next year, and he's been scoring a lot of points this year as a combo guard. Also, I wanted to mention Keith Dinwiddie from Fairfax High School. They had a big win over Westchester. He scored 32 points in the ball game against Westchester. He had 7 threes. So they're looking good as they head into the city section championships and the possibly they could be an open representative from the city. The game tonight, Chino Hills won 60-52 over Etiwanda. Some would say maybe it was the best game that Chino Hills played this year. They've been up and down a little bit this year, but their seniors played their hearts out. Nick Manor-Hall, Sam Kean, Will Pluma, and of course Big O. They all played their hearts out. At halftime, it was kind of interesting because Chino Hills came out, and Etiwanda was still in the locker room until about 30 seconds before the start of the second half, and I figured Coach David Kleckner was letting Etiwanda have it. I thought they were going to come out like the Road Warriors, and they came out as hard as they could, but Sam Kean hit a 3 early on to start the second half, and Onyeka Okongwu hit a bucket right after that. So they held Etiwanda off. And I would mention moving forward, Jemai Mashik, sophomore from Etiwanda. He's a guy to watch. Reminds me a little bit of a young Cedric Altman from Ontario Colony, who's a senior this year, and he'll be heading to Pepperdine next year. But Mashik played well. In a lot of ways, I'm hoping that Onyeka can get through the state playoffs here healthy, get to college. He's been through an awful lot in his career. He's seen a lot, and he's taken some poundings, but he's held up well. He was the best player in LA last year, in my opinion, and at the end of the year, we'll have our first team and recognize all the best players again at the end of this year. As we move forward to the end of the season, this was senior night here at Chino Hills, but I wanted to talk a little bit about development of basketball players beyond the high school level, and it looks like it's going to be about 2021, 2022, where high school players will once again be able to go straight into the NBA. There was talk about 2020. I don't think it's going to happen, but when you look at the Power Five, the major Division I teams that have basketball and football, it's going to be interesting as the players can go directly to the NBA from high school. You're going to see the Power Five probably get the next best level of players. It'll kind of drop down a little bit. So it's gonna be really important for coaching and management moving forward. Right now, in my opinion, the Pac-12 coaching is not that great. There's a lot of very good basketball players in the Los Angeles area, so we see a lot of people continuing on to the NBA from the Pac-12, but it's not fantastic right now, in my opinion. I think it takes a dynamic person in that commissioner's office really to get a conference and get the teams to perform at the highest level. I remember about 30 years ago in the mid-major level, the Mid-American Conference, the commissioner just went to all those coaches at the start of the season, and he said, we need to win a game in the NCAA. And it was kind of unspoken that he was going to be kind of advocating for their dismissal if it didn't happen. But on the heels of that, you did see Eastern Michigan with Ben Braun, and Gary Waters came out of that program as well. He had a lot of success at Kent State. But with that pressure, you saw a lot of success for the Mid-American Conference. At the major college level, I think you got to kind of come in and tell the coaches, and it takes a unique person that all those coaches respect, but you got to tell, hey, we need to get a team to the Final Four. We need to get a national championship, and you also have to have those presidents on board with you because they're the ones that hire you in the end. So anyhow, as we move forward, and I also want to mention some of the players out of the Mid-American Conference, guys like Ron Harper, Dan Marley, came out of that Mid-American Conference from that pressure, and it kind of makes or breaks people. Dave Jamerson, a great shooter, was a first-round draft pick for the Houston Rockets that played at Ohio University as well. But to cite a Sanford University study, June 21st of 2018, just this past summer, and you can kind of make the statistics say what you want them to say, but a lot of people have cited this study. What we're looking at in terms of NBA players, the ACC with 92, the Pac-12 with 74, and again, I don't think it's necessarily due to the coaching. I think there's a lot of great athletes that come out of the Los Angeles area. The SEC with 67, the Big 12 with 45, the Big 10 with 42 NBA players, and then when you leave the Power 5, the Big East with 31 NBA players. There were foreign players, there were 72. The AAC, American Athletic Conference, 22, and then from mid-major, 79. So again, I think when high school players can jump straight to the NBA, there'll be a few of those. You're going to see the Power 5 are going to drop down and take the next best level. So, I personally, I hope the Big East can pick it up. I think that they have some positives going for them. Obviously, the last few years with the national championships. But it's clear that they're going to need superior coaching and management moving forward or you're going to see a long-term slide. And in my opinion, I think the commissioner needs to go in and demand that another team other than Villanova gets to the Final Four. Because it seems like, especially this year, as Villanova lost 4 players to the NBA, and they're still leading the conference, it feels like the old UNLV teams from the Big West. So as you saw the conference initially, the Big East, it was almost more of the franchise type of model where Dave Gavitt was a commissioner that had a lot of respect from all the coaches, and he initially told all these coaches and administrators, we need to play in the big-time downtown arenas where the Celtics play, where the Knicks play, where the Sixers play. And it didn't cost them to build the arena, but they had to share in the revenue or work something out with that arena. So almost through smoke and mirrors, it was amazing how they created a powerful conference early on and got to the point in 1985 where there were 3 Final Four teams. And through time, as you've seen the evolution, I think that UConn, they reinvested in their program. They built Gamble Pavilion. When you saw Boston College build the Connie Forum and their football facility, they reinvested. Now, unfortunately for the Big East, those schools are no longer in the conference. They've moved on. And I think when you look at UConn today, I don't think that would be a fit necessarily for the Big East as well. Now, just to break it down a little further, I did a little SWOT analysis on the Big East, and you could get a lot more detailed, but from 10,000 feet in the sky, if you look at the strengths of the Big East Conference, the basketball players in the megalopolis and the population center on the East Coast, you got a market of roughly 50 million people, Boston, New York, Philly, Baltimore, and DC. And then, of course, the major cities in the Midwest that they brought into that conference. Also, I think the parents of a lot of players remember the success of the Big East, so that's a strength. And then I mentioned the recent championships in basketball as well. Weakness, well, the schools have small enrollment and a small alumni base, so that doesn't help on a national basis. There's no presence in Boston, so I've thought that maybe Holy Cross or some other school in Boston that they could help elevate and bring up to their level would possibly be a good idea. No football brings you less money. And then another weakness, the population is moving and migrating to the Sun Belt. And then there's far travel for the Olympic sports. Without the money from football, that gets expensive with their geography right now. And then losing 3 of their top coaches recently kind of sent a signal to the basketball world a little bit. They lost Buzz Williams a few years ago, who went to Virginia Tech from Marquette. Chris Holtmann went to Ohio State from Butler, and Chris Mack went from Xavier to Louisville. And in his case, he went from a $1.7 million salary to $4 million a year. So that really exemplifies some of the challenges they have in the conference. In terms of opportunities, I think the Big East Championship in Madison Square Garden, and they've certainly exploited that. Recent national championships is another opportunity that can be promoted. The perception of good academic programs in the Northeast, I think, can be a draw. Let's move to the threats. Now, I think the American Athletic Conference has football, and in my opinion, better basketball coaches right now as well. The Big Ten is at Rutgers, at Maryland, also at Penn State, and then you have the ACC in that footprint of Boston, Pittsburgh, and Syracuse. So the finances become very important when you're competing in the same region. And to break down the coaching a little further, let's look at it. And I'm not talking about good guys or bad guys, just kind of focused on productivity. What I see, and I think it's wise to kind of cross off the top coach in the conference and look at kind of the meat of your conference. The AAC, I'd call the top coach Greg Marshall. Wichita State is down this year, but he's certainly a proven coach. Kelvin Sampson, I would rate number 2 from Houston. Mick Cronin from Cincinnati, 3. Danny Hurley, number 4. And Fran from UConn. Fran Dunphy from Temple, I would put at 5th. And then the wild card, I would say from the AAC, I would say Penny Hardaway from Memphis, where he's attracting some very talented high school players and doesn't necessarily have the experience at the college level, but it's a good wild card to have. The Big East, the top coaches, Jay Wright at Villanova. So I'm saying look at the 2 through 5 and knock out the top coaches. Kevin Willard from Seton Hall, Steve Wojciechowski from Marquette, Greg McDermott from Creighton, and Ed Cooley at Providence is how I would look at those coaches. And the wild cards would be Patrick Ewing and Chris Mullen, respectively. So when you look at Sampson, Cronin, Hurley, and Dunphy, compared to Willard, Wojciechowski, McDermott, and Cooley, I would take that group from the AAC right now. Now, from there, let's look at the facilities. And the problem that the Big East has is they don't control all of their arenas. I think a lot of people use that as a promotional tour and a promotional tool. Say you're Marquette, you talk about this world-class Milwaukee Bucks arena, and the recruiting is going to be helped. But clearly, I would rather own the facility as close to campus as possible. When you look at Wichita State, Koch Arena, 10,506 seats. The Fertitta Center for Houston, 7,101 seats. They had over 10,000 at Hoffheinz Pavilion, and it was redone, and they put luxury seats around the top, so it's down to about 7,100 seats. Cincinnati, the redone third arena, 12,012 seats. UConn Gampel Pavilion, about 10,167 seats. And then Temple, the Leah Course Center, 10,200 seats. And that compares to the Big East, where all the on-campus facilities are much smaller, and they play in the NBA arena, the convention center, the downtown type of arena. So when let's take a look at, say, a deal that Marquette has. Their terms are $29,000 per game that they pay, and they give up $2 per ticket sold. Okay, and then they get a credit for use of the suites. But it's good to promote that you play in an NBA arena, but it kind of hurts that you have to give up a portion of each ticket. And I think in 5 years, around the time that Marquette's going to have to renegotiate their deal there, it's going to be a telltale sign for the Big East. Is that school able to build their own arena? This last time around, they pursued it and studied it and used that as a negotiation tool, really, to get a better deal with the Milwaukee Bucks arena. But next time around, let's see what happens here. And I think that's going to tell you quite a bit about the long-term future of that Big East Conference. Is schools like St. Bonaventure historically have had very good basketball, and through the years, just a number of things. Now they don't have a lot of great recruits around St. Bonaventure, but again, superior coaching, superior management, I think, can help take the Big East to the next level. Let's see here. From there, just wanted to talk a little bit about the money aspect in the different conferences. And in 2018, the SEC, each school took $43 million home from their conference, okay? The Big Ten, it was about $37 million. The Big 12, and by the way, it looks like there was some information released out of Michigan that they were going to get around 51 million, so that may be the more likely number. The Big 12, it was about 36.5 million each school got. The Pac-12, 33.5 million. The ACC, 28 million. So there's a little bit of a complicated formula with the American Athletic Conference when they split from the Big East. It was roughly about $110 million that went to the AAC, and the Big East keeps the name and that type of thing. But anyhow, the AAC is certainly doing well. Even a place like South Florida has redone the Sun Dome, so their facilities are looking pretty good, and they control their facilities. That's pretty much it for the night here out in Chino Hills. Wanted to give break down a little bit of the future of basketball after the high school level, as it's going to change as kids are able to go to the NBA. And we'll see how the competitive landscape changes. And I also, just to summarize again, I think at the commissioner level, there needs to be some pressure applied to get some of these conferences that are on the edge of going one way or another, get them back up to speed or staying at the high level. So thanks for joining us again, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week from another neighborhood here in Southern California.